Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. Today I really do feel very sleepy, um, which is strange because I drank a lot of coffee at lunch, which was just what, 2 hours ago, 2.5 hours ago, with my buddy John Stout. John is doing well, and we had a great lunch together. We do miss Travis, Comics with Bueller, because it used to be the three of us hanging out together all the time. But anyway, I've got comics here from a stack of 10 comics that I picked up on Wednesday, May 8th. It's now Wednesday, May 15th. And I picked up a whole new set of comics, but I finally finished reading these and have found some time, I think, if the cat and my daughter will allow, to tell you what I thought in my very subjective countdown, where I count down from the one I enjoyed reading the least to the one I enjoyed reading the most. There was really only one comic that I did not enjoy reading, but I will rank them anyway, totally subjectively, because that's what I do. And I'm sleepy and I think I'm repeating myself. Um, so the one I did not enjoy, sadly, was Turtles Black and White and Green. I think the point usually of these kinds of anthologies is to highlight the work of artists, and they kind of do that here. We got a Declan Shalvey story that he wrote and drew, um, and the art's kind of cool. But I pretty much, started to stop reading and just look at the pictures. There's something very boring about that story. I can't even remember why. A little more interesting was this story that was by Jesse Lonergan, that he co-did the writing with Dave Baker and did the drawing. I'm a Jesse Lonergan fan in general, at least of his own indie work. Um, I did drop the comic he was doing with Pichote Hornsack. Um, and this one, it had a good idea. Somehow it didn't gel. And even though Lonergan was doing interesting things with layouts, which is sort of one of the things he's known for, it just didn't click that much. And the story itself, just because of its length, I guess, was really hasty. You have one of the turtles go off to another dimension and become kind of a power mad dictator, but that wasn't, you had to kind of read between the lines to sort of put together the story he was trying to tell you. And then it wrapped up very quickly where, okay, hey, you've become a power mad dictator. Why don't you come back home and stop being one? Okay, bye. So, not very satisfying. And then The Flame That Fools You, written by Gigi Duterex and Lorenzo Hall, with art by Gigi Duterex. I'd never heard of Gigi Duterex. I don't think the art turned me on very much. I can't actually remember. Did I read this story or did I just look at the pictures? I think I just sort of. I'm already not a Turtles person, but these things didn't capture me. Here's one with story and art by Paulina Gunnashu. Also, perhaps, maybe to some people, exciting artist, but to me, not really. Um, and I can't remember. I think I read or skimmed this story. So I became a bad reader. My favorite thing is the issue for next cover by the cover for next issue. Okay, man, I need like 5 times more caffeine. So yeah, this came in at number 10, sadly. And I'm putting in at number 9. This was a little tricky for me to judge because I kind of had fun with the artwork. Boy Wonder, written and drawn by Junie Ba. Some very cool colors by Chris Halloran, a colorist that I sometimes like a lot and sometimes don't, click with entirely. But I thought he did a really good job here. And the art vibe is, I don't know, a little maybe Samurai. What was that guy's name? Samurai Sam? No. Samurai Jack. A little bit of a Samurai Jack kind of feel to the art, which was kind of cool. The story was fine, but not, I don't know. It just didn't click with me. Looking at the art here, showing it to you guys, I'm kind of getting into it more. I think I was, even though the art was kind of cool, I was trying to kind of focused on the story about Damien, but it just, on the story level, it was Was it a kid's story? I don't know. It just felt a bit on the edge of what kind of story did it want to be, maybe. I don't know. It just didn't click with me. Again, I'm sleepy. I'm not thinking. The Valiants, the prelude to the resurgence of the Valiant universe. This was a pretty good story. I think I judged it harshly because I don't know if it would be that great of a story for people who maybe this is the beginning of their Valiant experience, which you would sort of assume prelude to Valiant resurgence. But it felt like you had to kind of know the characters already. And it was a perfectly fine but not very mind-blowing story. It didn't. I guess it's the beginning of the gathering together of the gang again, and the laying of some foundation of other things to come, but it was kind of just maybe a middling issue. Um, an interesting thought I had while reading it was, this is one of the comics that I truly see that it was saved by the color. If you just really look at the art, it's just kind of okay. But if you just look at the line work, if you try to imagine what this looked like in black and white, it's not, the figures are a little awkward. There's nothing it doesn't really pop. But the colorist made many of these pages really pop and made me really enjoy the artwork. And it was the color, because I would take it in holistically and think it was really good artwork, but then look at the details and I would never find, artwork that was really great on a detail level, or on a, not by detail. I don't mean like it has to have a lot of lines or something, but just that graceful lines or visually pleasing lines. It's more if you just look at the line work, it's one of these by the numbers kind of, I don't want to say cheap, but possibly cheaper kind of artists. So I got curious because I noticed it said Valiant and then it said Alien Books. I do like that they have a corner box. I hope they keep that up. And I probably will try some more. I do have a strong affection for the Valiant universe. I think I liked a lot of the original Valiant under Jim Shooter. Then it kind of dissipated in the later 90s. But then I really liked when Valiant came back in the 2000 teens. They did a really good job for a long time on that. And so I have hopes for this. And they seem to hire pretty good writers. What I learned researching it, what is Alien Comics? It's a company from Argentina that has gotten the license from I think, is it Chinese owners of some company owns Valiant now. I mean, it's good to call Valiant Entertainment, but I think some other larger international company, possibly Chinese, maybe something else, I'm not sure, owns it. So they're licensing it out to this not government, it's Argentinian company who publish both in Argentina and in Spain. So this is they put out a few more earlier Valiant comics, which I never saw, and they're going to put out a Howard Chaykin comic. So their Valiant is only part of their entry into the United States market. I think they're also going to do some translated manga. Um, so they have a few employees in the US, and then they have a larger staff in Argentina that maybe is doing a lot of the design work. And maybe, I don't know necessarily if this is a artist from Argentina, but they probably draw their artists from Al Barrionovo. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce that name. I don't know if that's a Spanish name, a name you might be likely to come across in Argentina. So that's just an interesting, because I like, sometimes following some of the trivia of the comic book business. And I don't think I've heard before of well, there's Titan Comics and stuff, but I haven't heard of really a licensing deal with a company from another country entering the US market. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. But what it makes me think, and I think I saw in here some other writers that are lined up for some of these books. Yeah, like Dan Abnett's going to be on Rye, but I never heard of the artist that's going to be on Rye. Whereas previously, they had a Rye series that I read that was art by Juan Jose Ripe, one of my favorite artists. So I think what we're going to see is good writing and possibly, more hastily art. But there's a whole bunch of stuff. So I guess they already in February and March and April put out some books: Britannia, Punk Mambo, Bloodshot Unleashed. But I never saw them. I did see Faith Returns, which came out the same week as this, and I looked at that and I really couldn't dig the art in that, so I didn't pick it up. They got Bloodshot, more Bloodshot, Rye, The Book of Dark, The Valiants. Exo Man of War was supposed to be out today, and I didn't find it in my shop. So I think it's going to be a little hard, at least at first, to find it. It's a nice package, good quality. It was a $5 book, but good quality cover stock and the like. So it's interesting. Um, so that was number 8. In it, number 7, Aint No Grave. And my enthusiasm for this rests mostly in the art and in its potential for being an interesting story. It seems to be about a woman gunslinger back in the Wild West, probably a fantasy version of the Wild West, who is dying of something, maybe tuberculosis or cancer or something. She's spitting up blood. She has a family. She leaves her family and goes to travel to this place. What's it called? I forget now what it's called. But it basically, I think, is the home of death. And so I think she's out to kill death. And what I learned most from this comic is that outlaw women back in the 1870s, I suppose, like to say fuck and motherfucker a lot. I couldn't tell what that creature was. So anyway, interesting art. This is the same artist who's doing Transformers, Jorge Corona. I don't know if he's did these at different times or if he's a really fast artist, because this is like a double-sized or triple-sized issue. It was $6. Um, yeah, so we'll see. I'll definitely pick up another issue and see where it's going. In at number, it was very decompressed. We didn't learn a lot of information in this issue from Ain't No Grave. We basically figured out that she's dying of something, and she goes off, she wanders through the wilderness, and then she gets to where she was headed. It's like, I don't know, Crystal City, something city. But it seems to be the home, possibly the home of death. So yeah, you get a lot of pages, with about that much dialogue on them. Very pretty though, very stylized. So, and then another pretty book without a whole lot of story was Geiger number 2, volume 2, I guess, and fantastic art and coloring. Brad Anderson on the colors and Gary Frank on the art. And we have our High Plains drifter. Geiger wanders into a town, and to keep his sidekick, who he's not really that excited about his sidekick, but to keep his sidekick from being arrested or killed, he agrees to go after this criminal that's been bothering the town. And he does, and he solves the problem pretty quickly, and that's pretty much the story. So there's a lot of areas with great art and very little dialogue. So yeah, it's fun as he High Plains drifts from town to town, I guess, and encounters different things. But it's not very dense. It's not very dense. But I enjoyed it. I'm definitely sticking with Geiger. Okay, in a completely different vein, and I don't know if if this comic hadn't been so embarrassing, would I have ranked it higher? I'm not sure. It's such a weird concept. I put it at number 5. Geiger was number 6. It's called Shadows Over Springfield by Harry Nordlinger. And I think I've heard that name somewhere before, maybe in some small indie comics or people talking about small indie comics. This and this raises a lot of copyright questions. It doesn't say Simpsons on the cover, but these are the Simpsons. They're called the Simpsons. Lisa Simpson, Bart Simpson, etc. We got Mose, we got Principal, what was the principal's name? We got the principal, we got all the major characters drawn in this kind of underground comic book style. And kind of a series of short stories that really make up a longer story, but each one is dated, so maybe they appeared in an anthology or a newspaper somewhere. Um, and how to talk about it without giving away too much. But basically, we have serial killing and suicide. There's no humor in this unless it's really, really dark humor, laughing at taking the Springfield characters to this extreme. So yeah, there we go with Shadows over Springfield. It's definitely a unique, interesting comic. I'm kind of puzzled that it exists. It's a nice package. I don't know if it has a publisher. I found this at the comic book store called Floating World, which, yeah, there's no publishing information whatsoever in here. Just this $8. They had it on their new comics for the week rack, so I'm just counting it as a new comic for this week. In at number 4, the always fun Santos Sisters, published by the aforementioned Floating World comic book shop. They have their own publishing line. This, I think I've talked about this many times now. This is issue number 6. This is just a really well done, slightly adultish at times, but not too much, comic book with a Archie vibe about two sisters who can turn into these magical superheroes. But that's not really the center of their lives. They just occasionally have to do it. It's like, okay, let's go stop this crime, and then let's get back to hanging out with our friends and smoking pot or something. And there's some joke ads. I think that's a joke ad there. I'm not even sure. But then there's also real ads in here, and it's on glorious newsprint. So it's really pleasurable, a really pleasurable thing, probably just for old guys and gals to be nostalgic. But maybe it has some humor in it that will make more sense to younger people than to older people. Um, so anyway, a lot of fun. It was a very quick read. I it just left me wanting more. But cool book. Maybe I should have ranked it higher. I don't know. It's number 4. But then one of my favorite comic books, I'm ranking at number 3, and I think I've imbibed a lot of Usagi. And this was a perfectly enjoyable comic, nice colors, nice drawings. It felt a little padded out, which is an unusual feeling for me with Usagi. Normally, it feels like everything is perfect, but it felt there's nothing bad, and maybe some of the repetition in here was intentional on Stan Sakai's part. But this is a 5-part story, but I almost started to feel like, hey, is he padding things out a little bit? But very good suspense, very good continuation from the last issue. The story plot does thicken, so to speak. And now on to my 2 most favorite comics of the week. I really enjoyed Mugshots, both the art and the story. It's a crime story, so it's not completely unfamiliar at all. It's got a lot of familiar elements. Takes place in the UK. It has this very stylish art that uses just one color tone and black, but the color tone switches. It kind of makes a new chapter each time the color tone switches. And we are switching points of view of characters. Um, we've got we've got some pretty brutal criminals here. It doesn't, even though it has this kind of light, fun art style, it doesn't pull any punches about, what crime is, and it's not good, and the people who do it are not good. Um, but and it gives you all the information you need, but it doesn't hold your hand or anything. So I just really liked the way it was structured. A long section is just in the blue again. Let's see. Oh, then they switched to the brown. Yeah. So is it all blue, then brown, blue, then brown? I think that's it. I'll have to go back and see what the pattern is. So I don't know this is from Mad Cave. Mad Cave's becoming a very interesting publisher. Um, and the artist is Chris Matthews, who I'd never seen before, but I'm super impressed by him. I think this would really appeal a lot to fans Darwin Cook and his mystery, his crime books. What were they called? Parker. Yeah. I'd say if there's any flaw to this, there's no character that I really like. I'm not rooting for anyone. I'm just kind of disturbed by the whole thing. Although there is a kidnapped girl, and I am rooting that things go well for her somehow. We only see her at the beginning of the story, although she's just the driver of the plot. So we don't know yet by the end of issue 1 what's happened to her. Oh, there's your missing thing. Yeah, so really excellent comic in my opinion. I put it number 1 because of the build up from previous issues and previous issues from this is the one hand number, is it 5, number 4. So the build up both from previous issues of the one hand and previous issues of the sixth finger. Um, those are building up together and the story's getting very intense. I think the one hand has the art that I like the most. The one hand is this one, which is written by Ram V. The other one's written by Dan Waters. I can't remember the artist. The art on that's good too, but I really love the art of Lawrence Campbell and the coloring of Lee Lowridge. I think I've said it recently. Lee Lowridge is definitely one of my favorite colorists. Uh, I think there was one comic he colored that I didn't like the color in, but I almost always really notice now that I think about color more, how well told visually with color any comic that Lee Lowridge does. So yeah, this has that Alex Maleev style art, but it's a little different and lots of cool sort of layout tricks, and it's pretty intense. So we get a little more step forward in the revelations of what's going on, a few more clues, more questions. But if you've been reading both of the comics, I think I don't know how it would feel if you just were reading this one comic, the Ram V comic, the one hand, without reading the sixth finger. But I'm reading both, and for me, the build up is starting to really pay off, even though it's kind of slow in letting out its secrets. So yeah, it could be, when I get to the final issue of, I don't know which one will be the end point. Will it be the sixth finger or the one hand? Anyway, when I finish it all, if it all is this is the problem with this kind of story. What is revealed at the end could change my feeling about the whole thing, I suppose, or at least to a degree. So that was all of the stuff I read last week, or that I considered new comics. I actually also read Superman House of Brainiac, which should have read the week before, I think. Um, and it was kind of a waste of time. You can definitely, it's the House of Brainiac 2.5, and you can definitely skip it. I guess I picked it up because there was some interesting background about Brainiac and the Cisnarians, the planet that Lobo came from. And I know very little about Lobo's past, other than I've heard that he destroyed his own planet. Um, so I don't know if this is new information or stuff that longtime readers would have known anyway. And that part was pretty cool. And then one of my favorite writers, Mark Russell, did the bulk of the story, which was about um, Perry White running for mayor of Metropolis, and he's the mayor who's on the side of the alien immigrants. And there's another candidate that's much more popular who's against, totally against the alien immigrants, who are literally aliens. And I think the political metaphor didn't work, and the whole tone of the story just didn't work, even though Mark Russell, many of his stories have some kind of political component, often anti-corporate. He's probably a bit of a Marxist or something, but um, although you can be anti-corporate and still like regular capitalism, I think. But anyway, that's totally besides the point. But usually his politics work, he's managed to work them into the story in a way that I like, but I didn't really like it in this one. So let's see. Let me show you the comics I picked up today at 2 stores, and I still didn't get everything I was hoping to get. But I got enough, and I'm too lazy to go to even more stores. I got Ice Cream Man number 39. I'm really excited about that. I'm very excited for Red Coat. Is this a, yeah? No, is it? Yeah, it is a double spread cover. And that looks familiar from last issue, actually. And I'm not quite sure why, but I picked up the Principles of Necromancy issue 2. Even though I was kind of disturbed by the last issue, I'm curious to see where this is going. Napalm Lullaby number 3. Not the best Rick Remender so far, but maybe it'll pick up. What's this? Oh, I I don't normally pick up many physical Marvel comics because I can read them, but rarely do on the Marvel Unlimited app a few months later. But I can't resist a one-shot about Doctor Doom, with co-written by Jonathan Hickman. One of the comics I couldn't find is I wanted Rat City issue 2. They had this new comic Monolith, which I assume is related to the Spawn universe also. It's not written by Todd McFarlane, but it it's is that the sign of the Spawn universe? I'm not sure. Anyway, there's the cover for issue 2. Did I get a variant cover? Yeah, I got cover B. Heart Piercer. The art in here looks really cool. I think it's a fantasy story, so I'm interested to see what that's about. And I picked up, of course, House of Brainiac number 3, Action Comics 1065. I am suspecting this cover will connect to the Superman cover coming out in a week or two. We'll see. You know what? I picked this up, but I think I already had it. Barbaric Born in Blood, number 1. And by accident, I had to go to my second store to get this. I thought I had this on my pull, but it did not show up at my normal store, Uncanny Valley. And I think by accident, I picked up the variant cover, the cover B by Jorge Corona. I thought it was the main cover. Got to pay more attention. I found Dead Weights, which came out last week, and I couldn't find it last week, but I found it this week. I like Dead Weights issue number 1. And then the weird comic of the week, My Body Unspooling, which I wouldn't have known about if I hadn't watched Pop Culture Philosophers, Robbie's advanced comic book reviews. So this looks pretty crazy, and I just thought it'd be fun to have a crazy comic book in the mix. And in fact, when I was at Floating World, I got this sort of pseudo underground comic, Pee Pee Poo Poo, which I enjoyed. I don't know if I enjoyed it $10 worth, but it was interesting. Little slices of life. It could have been better, but it could have been a lot worse. Slice of life is something I'm kind of picky about. Oh, and I also last week didn't read some new comics that I got. Christopher Chaos number 9. I have 1 through 9, but I haven't read any of them, so I didn't have time to read all 9. And I got Transformers number 8. I got the trade for Transformers also, and I read a little bit of it, and I started to get confused which robot was which, and I put it down. I need to get back to that. Anything else? So that's it for today. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you're all enjoying your comic book week.